Good morning, this is Owen Cox here from planarheaters.co.uk. Today we're going to be fitting a 2 kilowatt Autoterm 2D air heater to this VW T5 I have behind me. You can see that there. I'm going to run through all the basic stuff that you need to know on fitting a heater to these vans. So Volkswagen T5 mounting. This is the specific one for mounting underneath, underslung as everybody calls it. And here we have a turret plate that you can see that we supply, which the heater mounts on, and that can go under the driver's seat is the most recommended place. Note there's a grommet for the fuel pump wire to go through as well. What I'm going to show you today is the underslung mounting using this bracket. If you buy our kit, this comes in the kit for a VW T5. 6 is this exactly the same. So T5, T5.1 and a T6 all use this bracket. Okay, I'm underneath the VW T5 at the moment. I'm going to show you which panels we're going to take off. Basically, this is the under tray, which is on the driver's side. So we're up on a vehicle lift here. So this is the one you want to remove. If I stand back there, the front of the van is behind me. This is the driver's side, and it's this one. The exhaust is going to come out here, which is the factory position, and it comes out into the tunnel here, just as the van exhaust does. So we'll remove that one. While we're here, on the other side is the fuel tank. So we'll be removing that later to put the fuel fitting in. Okay, so to remove the front panel on the driver's side to mount the heater underneath, you need an 8mm socket. We use a ratchet gun, which makes it a lot easier. These are a bit rusted up, so we may have an issue, but there's 2 at the rear. There's one here. There's then another one here at the front. There's another one up in that hole. There are then, what I found here is bend the exhaust heat shield out a bit. You've got one of these star clips, then another screw in there, and at the very front end there's also another star in there, and that's it. Once you've undone all those, the tray will come down. Okay, so I've removed the under tray now from the underneath the driver's side to mount the heater. So there's the tray on the floor now, and if we come up, we can see here's the space where the heater goes. If I stand back a little, you'll see a bit more where it is. There's that hole that the exhaust is going to come out of ultimately, and if we look up here, you can see this grommet, which is directly underneath the driver's seat, so that's very convenient for running the cables for power and for the display cable through. That's directly under the driver's seat. So yeah, then we've got a hole here which you can put a riv nut in, another hole here that you can put a riv nut in, and on the back around there is a little hole that the bracket will hook into. I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, so this is how the bracket goes up. So basically that hooks into that hole up there, and it then bends up and it should hold itself. Now, 2 ways to mount it is either use nutserts in there and in there, or what we do is we use tech screws. That works really well, quick and easy, and very, very solid. So here you go, here's what we use for mounting the plate underneath the van. And so that's 2 tech screws, an 8mm rattle gun, and that's all you need. 8mm gun is also useful for undoing all the under tray bolts, screws that hold it on. So there's the bracket now screwed up with 2 tech screws. That's good and solid now. We use stainless steel because they rust out if you use the powder coated steel ones. We've seen quite a few that fall apart. Okay, so here we've got the heater. I'll run you through the electrical connections. On here you've got the display cable. That plugs into the display cable, which I'll show you shortly. This here is for the extra auxiliary temperature sensor, which you can use in some applications. Not usually needed, but it is there if you do need it. Then over here, 2 more connections. This one with the red and black is the power. This red and blue is the fuel pump supply from the heater out to the pump. And this brown and white that are tied together are meant to be like that, and that's for a remote start. Just show you the connections on here. This rubber is very important, the rubber gasket that will seal it down to the plate and make sure it doesn't leak any gases. Just in case anyone doesn't know, this here is the exhaust, and the hot air comes out the same end as the exhaust. The combustion air intake is here, and it's always the one closest to the fuel pipe. You wouldn't put the fuel pipe that close to the exhaust. Another way is the fan. If you look in the end, you can see the end of the fan there. That is always the cold end, so it's drawing the air in. So combustion air is at the cold air end as well, and the hot end, exhaust, and at this end you've got the heat exchanger. So on these heaters for this installation, we actually don't need the end caps. We need to get the ducting on, so you can unscrew that, and then 60mm ducting will go straight on, and the same on the other end for this particular type. And that's that. What we will do at this point is remove the little protective cap for the fuel line. Just stops dirt getting in it during transport, and I will put a short joining piece on as soon as I've mounted it onto the plate. So here's the heater mounted in place now. Just 4 nuts on there with spring washers and the little joiner piece. So you need a 10mm socket for there, and you need a 7mm socket or a flathead screwdriver for the Jubilee clips. That one's tight. Good little tip is, before you mount this on there, just to give you enough space to get the combustion air pipe on, it's a good idea just to bend the pipe ever so slightly out. It gives you a little bit more space, otherwise the Jubilee clips hit against each other and it won't go on. The other point is, if you look at the end of it, the cables come out of the top of the heater. That is the only way it can be mounted. It can be mounted like this, with those pointing out sideways, as long as the wires are at the top. If they're at the bottom, it won't work. And they can be mounted with those pointed vertically, but obviously not in this type of installation. Okay, the next part to do is to pre-assemble the fuel pump. So the fuel pump comes without the rubber on. In this case, we want the pump mounting this way. There is an arrow on it there showing the flow direction, but the flow always comes in at this end, flows through and comes out the same end as the plug. This is the same on all of our fuel pumps. The end with the plug is the outlet towards the heater. That needs to go in the P-clip, and then we'll put 2 of those, 1 on each end with 2 clips on each. So there we go, fuel pump made up. That's mounted on the P-clip. and ready to be screwed on the van. Little point for you, 7mm socket is ideal for doing up those Jubilee clips. So again, here we go, fuel pump now mounted up, tech screwed or used with a riv nut into there, and then I shall pipe it up shortly. Next step will be the combustion air and the fuel line from here round to the pump. Okay, so here's the parts you need for mounting the combustion air pipe. So combustion air pipe, a Jubilee clip, P-clip and a tech screw. So combustion air pipe is fitted now, Jubilee clip there. I've turned it around this way because it's easier to get on to tighten it up. The most important thing is, if you look at this, it runs downhill all the way. So if any water gets in there, it will run out of the end. And it's also very handy to follow the combustion air pipe with the fuel pipe when we take that round to the pump over here. The fuel pump being here is the quietest place I can find on the van for it, and it makes it very convenient. So that's that bit done. Now next what we'll do is put the fuel line on, and then we'll step onto the exhaust. So now we're running the fuel pipe from the pump around to the tank. The way I do it is like this. This cable tie here is very important, I've found. Stops this rattling against there. Sometimes it makes this rattle, and that's really loud inside the van. So we then go over the top. This is around where the handbrake is, and then out the other side, and then we can go back to where the sender is at that end of the tank. I go across the tank, and actually when we drop the tank we can show you on the other side where we clip the pipe into, and go from there. Okay, the fuel pump cable, this is the cable here. You got the cable. If you need to run it through anything in the van, you can run it through like this without the plug on, but on a Volkswagen you don't need to, because everything's outside when they're underslung. So this plug goes on here. If you look closely, sorry, the other side, there is a 1 and a 2. Red goes in 1, black goes in 2. When you push these in, make sure you hear the click as it goes in. There's a click then, I hope you heard that. And then push that little clip over, and that's it. So they go in that way around. Okay, so the fuel pump cable plugs into this plug. I've bundled it up like this, and the plug, as you saw before, is already on. Now that just goes onto the pump, and good click on, and now it won't come off. And then all I do with the end is push the excess up on top of the heater out of the way. So the fuel line is installed now from the heater to the pump. So that comes around here. See, I've cable tied it to this line, which keeps it going in the right direction, nice and smooth. That comes around and into the pump there, and then, as I discussed earlier, off to the tank there. Right, so now we're going to install the exhaust pipe. You've got the exhaust pipe here, silencer, a mounting bracket for the silencer, the tech screw to hold that onto the chassis, and 3 clips. That's what you're going to need. I use an angle grinder to cut a slot in the end. When you open these packs, you will find that the exhaust pipe already has this slot in. That's very important because that's what allows the clamp to tighten up and hold securely. The other thing is, notice where it is, that it only goes up to the edge of that crimp there, so that if you go too far with it into the next one, you'll find the rings all fall apart and the exhaust will fall to pieces. But as it is there, that's absolutely fine. Very important. On marine ones, what we tend to do is put some exhaust gum around here, just squirt around here, so that when you push it on onto there with the clamp on, you don't end up filling up the exhaust and blocking off the pipe with the exhaust paste. So that's very important. Exhaust paste around the silencer or whatever you're going onto, and then push the exhaust pipe onto there. Some people put it round the inside here and then they push it on and it blocks the pipe and causes problems. There's also a bit of heat insulation as well, which I'll show you once it's mounted on the van. So that's that. I'll mount it on the van now. So the exhaust pipe's fitted now. We'll have a short piece here going around to the silencer, which is bolted up to this bracket, which is fixed on with a Tech screw, and then the tailpipe coming out and into the tunnel. This is exactly how Volkswagen do it, out into the tunnel here. I don't particularly worry too much about fumes going up inside the van from here, because there just aren't any holes up there. What we have seen, sometimes people put the exhaust very close down this end somewhere here and put a hole out, but that can be right underneath a gas dropout, because often the gas bottle is immediately above here or further down the back. So we have seen gas going up, gases going from the exhaust inside there, but I find if you bring it out into the tunnel, the wind will just disperse it. And actually the later model Volkswagens now don't have this tailpipe going all the way to the back. They literally they stop just here, so that is also underneath the van. So I presume that the bottom is very well sealed on these vans and that won't be an issue. So on our heater now, we've now got a couple of things left to do. Basically we need a power supply, we need the display cable, and we need the air ducting. So what I'll have a look at now is positions for the air ducting. This is the return air into the heater. The fan is just inside there. So that is the back of the van, that's the front. Up here, there is a free piece in the step going into the driver's door. This will be the point where the air comes in, ducted from inside the van around to the heater. Then on the outlet side, we've got lots of options where we can put this to. Quite a very often used one is straight up inside here. That is the seat belt inertia reel mounting point inside the B pillar. So you can bring it out up here, which brings it just behind that, behind the seat inside the van. You can also bring it up over here, which brings it up just behind the driver's seat. The seat bolt is there, so that's this edge here is more or less the back of the seat, so you can actually go just about here, and that's just behind the seat base. Or you can bring it up, as I shall probably do on this one, bring it up through the bottom of the seat and then go straight out to the back of the seat. I'm going to try and squeeze a battery in underneath the driver's seat as well, as I find that makes the most use of all the space in the van. And that's that. I'll do some ducting now and then show you after it's done. So what you get in our T5 install kit is a metre of ducting and two 60mm grills. One's for the return air into the heater back in the step, and one is for the outlet. They've got these 45 degree angled blades on there, so you can turn the front round and point in the right direction that you want. And that's it really. So I'll carry on showing you how to put those in. Here's the inside of the driver's door on the VW T5. Where our grill is going to go is down here. Now, there's no cabling behind these usually, unless some aftermarket speaker wire or something has been put behind there, but usually there's nothing there in a standard van. What you have to be careful of is when you drill this hole that you don't put it too far up high, because the metal stops about here, and there's about, the metal stops about here, and there's about that much of gap with carpet. So you need to keep it low down here, but what you don't want to do is put this on, obviously with it going that way, and then screw it all in. You've drilled the hole, everything's perfect, but then this grill won't fit on because it's slightly larger. So just give it a couple of millimeters up, so you've got a bit of clearance for that to go around, and then you can mark the hole. What I tend to do is do it that way around, mark where the center is, and then drill a pilot hole through. Once I'm happy with it, then you can always look the other side underneath as well and check you're in the right place, and then do the cut with the 64mm hole saw for these particular grills. The Eberspacher ones tend to use, you need a 70mm hole through the plastic, and then a 64mm hole through the steel behind. So there's the hole all the way through. That's through the plastic and through the steel. Now that will go in there. You can fix it with the two screws in there, and then this will just pop on the front, and that's your return air grill fitted in. While this is out, it's a good time to waterproof and treat the metal, the bare metal there, so it doesn't rust out afterwards. That's what we tend to do now. Removing the seat in a VW T5, what I recommend is push the seat all the way to the back, which this one is, and then jack it all the way up if it has this adjustment. And then you need a 13mm socket to do the front bolts. There's another one over there. And then once you've done those two, slide the seat forwards and round the back. On this particular one, they are Torx bits, but this was only in a certain couple of years that they did this. Most of them nowadays are 13mm bolts as well. So yeah, 13mm or a Torx bit. There's two of those at the back, and then the seat will be loose. You can move the seat, and underneath there will be usually a cable going in for the seat belt warning light. So make sure you unplug that when you move it out. And don't forget to plug it back in again when you put the seat back in. Here we go then, seat removed. Now you just flap this up. They've got the usual dirt and dust that these vans always have if they've been used as a working van beforehand. I'm just going to cut a hole around here. Just missing where this seam is here, there is a double skin section, so it'll be just inside of there, and I'll keep the rubber bung for the future. I will then just have enough room for my battery to go behind, so that'll be ideal. Now to drill the hole. There we go, hole drilled. Like I say, either the battery will go at the side or there. If not, I'll put the battery somewhere else, but that's the best spot. You can move it around. You can't go too much further that way because there's a suspension mounting there. Sorry, chassis there. You can come a lot further forwards though if you want to, which does make it easier. You can also move this if necessary. A lot of them end up moved anyway because you have a big battery across the back there. I think what will happen is I'll get the battery in here and the ducting can run alongside. I can always put some insulation on it if necessary, but that's the way. Otherwise, you can, as I said before, you can put the vent out here. There's also a place in here that it will go, and you can sort of straddle this bit here. If you're going to box it in at all, you can put the vent out here somewhere and that will come out. But there's various other places. When you're really stuck, we've also run the ducting along underneath and brought it out of the step on the passenger side, which is also possible. And we have also brought it up and out of the double passenger seat if you're not having a swivel on there, or if it's a single seat, that also works. You can bring the ducting out that side. That's pretty good. Anyway, what I'm going to do is on the back of here I shall have a black, piano black wooden cover, just to make it look a bit neater. We have those available as well. So return air is now done. We've got that grill in the step here coming through down to the heater, then it goes through the heater out the other side where I've just put the new ducting on there, around the back of the exhaust and back up and out through the hole up under the driver's seat. While I was there, I also dropped down the power cable and the display cable through the rubber grommet underneath that seat. So there's basically, that's the whole of the heater install done, and if you look, it will all fit behind the heater. The only thing left to do is plug the two cables in, and we then have the fuel tank to sort out. Here's the finished heater install then. You see now I've sprayed and sealed around the joins where it goes through. People ask us a lot about what we use to hold these on, the ducting onto the heater. Quite honestly, we don't find they ever come off. I've not had them fall off yet, and we've had some severely damaged by things hitting them after the trays got ripped off in deep water or hitting something on a motorway, and it's never had the ducting come off. So unless we're doing a completely underslung without any protection, we tend to leave them as they are. We find that particularly on the inlet side, if you put a Jubilee clip on and wind it very tight, it squashes the casing, and this makes the fan stop going round, and we've had more trouble than anything with those issues. So we actually recommend don't do it. If you want to put something around there, just because the ducting is a slightly, ducting slightly worn or misshapen, you can put cable ties around and do them up as tight as you can, and that won't then cause any damage to the heater. I've put my cables down here now. Keep them clear of the exhaust. Try and make sure anything stays clear of the exhaust. It's fine with the hot air ducting because it's designed for the heat, and the temperature might actually give you a bit more heating if the exhaust is touching the inlet pipe, the hot air pipe. But we don't sort of recommend that. But in this case, it's very tight, but it won't do any harm.